Hello and welcome to Uncanny Book Club. I'm Isaac Faderspiel, and joining me as always is my co-host, Adam Ward.
Yo, it's X-Men time.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to switch away from D&D to talk X-Men. I was enjoying that, but they're both very good subjects. It's just hard to switch sometimes.
Yeah, we might need a D&D podcast one day.
Where is the X-Men tabletop roleplay RPG that everyone is asking for?
There is a Marvel tabletop game. I've never played it, but I know it exists.
But it's not like I guess I'm just looking for like a D&D reskin, mostly.
It would be difficult for me to play anything other than that, honestly. My brain is hardwired at this point to just play D&D. So playing a new system with new mechanics might be a difficult challenge.
Yeah.
But for now, we got comic books, and these are 3 of them that exist.
Yes, they are indeed 3 of them that exist, and I felt that maybe that would be your overall sentiment toward the 3 issues.
Overall, I mean, there are things I like. Don't get me wrong. I think there
For
are.
sure.
There's a lot of good nuggets in here.
And then there's things like, why is the primary antagonist a giant squid? What was the point of the shark? Have they jumped the shark?
Well, Scott kind of does.
They've only blasted it.
He kind of hangs on the side of the plane, really. And I think the shark is strictly there to show that this octopi or squid means business.
It's even more dangerous than a shark.
Is it a squid? It's an octopus. It's an octopus. I'm looking at it right now. It has an octopus-shaped head.
Look, I went to American schools. They never taught me no difference between an octopus and a squid.
Damn.
I'm looking at the wiki page. An unnamed octopus is the main antagonist. So you are correct. Octopus.
There you go.
It feels unfair that they put a shark in other characters and not antagonist. I realize that he didn't do much, but he did what he could.
He's certainly antagonistic.
Yeah.
Right? He's trying to get some munchies out of Scott's feet and just isn't successful.
You educate me a lot about professional wrestling. What term would you give to the role that the shark is playing in this story that we read?
Yeah. It's a bit of a red herring. That's not a wrestling term, but it's just the distraction, I think. He's in this case try to come out looking like the big dog. Only it's
big sea dog.
The big sea dog, the big shark, like Jaws, who my son somehow knew about because he watched a Minecraft video once and they mentioned Jaws, and he shocked me on the walk to school one day. And he was like, yeah, Jaws. I was like, how do you know this? You don't know what Jaws is.
You'll have to introduce them to the Jaws Nintendo Entertainment System game. Kick it back to the NES. Issue 176 starts with some kissing happening between the freshly married Scott and Madeline. They're flying to their honeymoon and throw the plane on autopilot so that they can join the Mile High Club. A bit later, a large storm knocks them into the ocean. Meanwhile, in Japan, Logan creeps into Mariko's room to return the sword that he just recently returned. They hash some things out. Mariko affirms that she is in love with Logan, and Mastermind messed with her, but that she needs to fix the whole crime situation her dad did. Scott and Mady are fixing the plane. A shark tries to eat Scott and then is grabbed by a giant octopus, not squid. I'll have to change my notes. Henry Gyrick appears for the first time in a while. He's summoned to a special meeting in Washington to discuss the mutant problem. Valerie Cooper is in favor of using mutants to fight against any possible incursions made by foreign powers using mutants. Gyrick disagrees and says that they'd be playing into Magneto's greatest fear, that humans will exploit mutants for their greed. He proposes doing nothing for now. Down in the sewers, Callisto and crew enters Caliban's home and tease him over Kitty, who had previously promised to live with Caliban in the sewer in exchange for his help. Callisto says if she obeys him, he'll get what he wants. Scott and Mady continue fixing the plane, but the giant octopus pulls both of them under. Scott shoots it a bunch, and eventually the two get back to the plane and successfully get into the air. They are without instruments and communication. They share a nice moment, and Scott says he's decided to stay on Earth with her instead of going on the Starjammer with his dad. The two fly off into the night. So I think the thing that we need to call out immediately, just because I feel like it's been at least a few issues or a few episodes of like what's going on here. We need some resolution to this.
Sure.
We did kind of resolve Wolverine and Mariko, sort of.
My first note was actually about how I, in a way, enjoyed the avenue that Chris is going down here with this, right? I think there's a couple different factors at play. I previously had talked about like the cultural difference and this desire to have to, honor your family and honor the wrongs that maybe they have done. And we see that again brought up here, right? Mariko feels this obligation to right these wrongs that her father did. But in some ways, I'm left feeling as though, why couldn't you do this with Logan by your side, right? I get that Logan is probably a very destructive force in her world and amongst, the people in her orbit who probably don't trust him, especially given the manipulation that occurred at the hands of Jason Wingard. But at the same time, I like to imagine there's an alternate world out there where she accepts Logan by her side and the two just take on the underworld together.
One line that's interesting to me is, thanks to my father and to me because of what I did while under Mastermind's influence, Clan Yoshida is bound body and soul to the Japanese underworld. I think there's portions of this that were just missing and not being relayed. Like this explains, so like we knew she ditches out on the whole wedding thing. That was Jason, obviously.
Yeah.
Likely also ties into whatever was going on with the Silver Samurai. I almost said Silver Surfer. Silver Samurai, when Logan first goes and returns the sword and, breaks through their wall. So I guess she must have done something that, tied the clan in more with the underworld, probably involving good old Silver Samurai. But I just wish we knew a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's a fair criticism. I think the other factor at play here is, they being like Marvel editorial wouldn't want Wolverine to just simply walk off into the sunset, a la Sean Cassidy, right? Never to be seen again. I imagine at this point in time, given that there was a mini released, albeit we talked about this last time.
A year ago at this point.
Yeah. Logan is probably at the peak of his popularity from a reader perspective. So to remove him from the X-Men was probably a detriment. Is there ways to write around that? I mean, sure, right? Like here we have Scott off gallivanting, going on a honeymoon just after the death of his, longtime love interest. And
this is Chris trying to write Scott out of the comics or, put him on the bench where he can live a happy life. That don't happen though.
Well, yeah, clearly. Yeah, it feels like there's only room for one budding romance, and Scott is the vessel, in this case, for that, and to introduce the drama that will kind of unfold over time. And I think it's clear that perhaps at this moment in time, it's, they've settled on Madeline, but when you make a character that looks like Jean Grey, is the same age as Jean Grey, is tied to a lot of events that are attached to Jean Grey, is manipulated by Jason Wingard because she looks so much like Jean Grey, it's difficult to not imagine that they still were on the fence about exactly what Madeline Pryor is. And obviously, like, we know at this point in time, in the future, that they really floundered on which way they wanted Madeline to go. And if they really, really, really wanted Madeline to just be a standalone character, they could have made her look different than Jean. She didn't have to be another redhead. She didn't have to have the same everything. But, this is what they've settled on. And
it's like in Beer Fest when the one guy dies and it's just replaced by his twin brother.
Yeah. Man, I haven't heard that movie in a long time.
I just gotta get those classic throwback references.
Like I'm happy to see Scott happy. I think for me, and we've kind of already alluded to this, I don't think either one of us really cared much for this aspect of this issue with them just flying, having engine problems, being attacked by a octopus, and then continuing on their way.
And a lot of jorts.
I feel like in some ways, like, I guess they're trying to paint a picture of their relationship and their commitment to each other, Scott making his decision to stay.
They can do it.
That all being said, you could have also just had a scene on a beach where they're there enjoying themselves, and Scott just says, by turning over to Madeline, "Hey, I'm going to stay. This feels right. I'm happy here. I'm happy with you." And that would have been the end of it. And they could have...
The majority of this book is just them in the ocean.
Yes. Yeah, fixing a plane.
Like physically in the ocean.
Dealing with the wildlife.
Being killed by an octopus.
Almost.
I think it's just out of balance. Like, I think, we like the small moments, but this is just like, it's an entire book of them sitting in the water.
What really shines here, and I think this is kind of a thread over all three issues that we're going to be talking about, is these breadcrumbs that are here that kind of paint the bigger picture, right?
Gyrick.
We can look at the negative space, right? The things that we don't like. There's a lot of it here. But yeah, Gyrick is back. I made a note that I'll read it verbatim. Henry Gyrick is going to be a real piece of shit.
Mine is Gyrick ! I'm surprised his plan is just to hold for now. Isn't he spearheading some of the Sentinel stuff? ?
Well, how many people in this room are aware of that?
Oh, that's like a secret thing between him. Is that him, the president, and Senator Kelly, or him, the president, and Shaw?
Yeah, so some sort of trifecta of people. I don't know that it's out there quite yet, but
yeah, that's fair.
I'm enjoying that we are addressing this anti-mutant sentiment that's kind of bubbling up because, and I may have mentioned this in a previous episode, but we spent so much time away from Earth and dealing with these, very sci-fi situations and aliens, and like, that's all great. I love it. I've enjoyed what we've enjoyed, but there is an element here of like traditional X-Men storytelling that is very much based in, this fear, right? Like this fear of change, this fear of people who are different. There's a lot of contrast still, right? From what we're seeing here to even events that are happening today in the modern era, and the relatability of how decision makers are getting into a room to talk about a bunch of people who are different than they are and why that scares them, and then making decisions based off that fear. They're not doing it in an intelligent way. They're not doing it based on numbers and data and facts. They're doing it out of a necessity that they've created in their minds that mutants are bad. We are going to go the way of the Neanderthal, to use their wording, and that is going to be a massive problem. So we're going to bring in a bunch of people in this case in Washington. Let's assume this is happening beyond just one country, right? They're talking about how across the world, governments are seeing mutants popping up. They talk about how they've been seen in Canada and Japan and a bunch of other countries. So
Russia,
this is, something that is probably happening at a higher level across the world, especially in light of what Magneto did, which is what they're talking about here. This fear that Magneto is so powerful and so strong, we are so screwed that he can just wipe us out, or mutants can come in here because they're superpowered beings and be hyper super assassins. The thing, of course, that is not being considered here, right? Because we're not talking about facts. We're not talking about realities. We're talking about the fear of this and how these people are once human, turning into mutant because they have that mutant gene, and the potential dangerous situations that might have. But we're also not acknowledging the fact that they are in a super being world where, regardless of mutants, there are super beings. I mean, they talk about how the Avengers could, if they wanted, like wipe them out, right? Like it would. I'm looking at the line right here. quote, had he persisted, our computers grant him a strong possibility of success, even against the opposition of such so-called superhero groups as the Avengers. Indeed, our research further indicates that were the Avengers themselves to attempt the conquest of the Earth, they could do so with ease. So there is like a slight acknowledgement of super beings, but at this point in time, right, if you're the government, you know that there are villains out there who are not mutants, who are just as dangerous, and you're not approaching them in this way. Anyways, this is all to say, like, I really enjoy this sort of inclusion back into this story as we kind of see these events that have happened over several issues, clearly scaring the general public, probably, right? The event with Magneto probably scared the hell out of people. And, you know, this is the ramifications of that. And, you know, when you make these decisions the way that they're making it, as we know, and if anybody who knows the, modern day X-Men lore, it never works out for humans either.
I think with that, we go 177.
Yeah. I mean, the other big, I guess, addition here is the Morlocks, but God.
My note is just the Morlock Caliban story thread is unfortunate.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. All right, on to the next one.
Issue 177 begins with Mystique narrating her thoughts as she wanders the circus. Wolverine is right behind her and pounces. She gets the upper hand on him and cuts his throat. Kitty then discovers the body and finds no pulse. We hear a snikt, and Kitty drops to the ground as Wolverine transforms back into Mystique. An enraged Colossus attacks her next, but she hits him with a flare skull. She's then hit with Cyclops from behind, and she hides in a funhouse. The mirrors work to her advantage, and she tricks Cyclops into shooting through Peter. She then strangles Scott from behind with a garrote. Storm is up next, but Mystique is prepared with a lightning-absorbing suit. She shoots Storm's power back her way, but hits a gas truck instead of her. She then shoots Rogue and takes her out, but when it comes to stabbing Nightcrawler, she hesitates. That's all it takes for Kurt to win out. We then see Mystique nursing her head and jaw with Destiny holding her. Arcade enters with some champagne to celebrate her performance against his X-Man bots. She asks to train the Brotherhood against the robots, and Arcade agrees as long as one of them is programmed to kill instead of stun. The reason for the training? Mystique is convinced that Xavier has tricked Rogue or used his powers to get her to switch teams. She means to rescue her. Destiny brings up her inability to harm the facsimile of Nightcrawler, and Mystique affirms that she will slaughter the X-Men to rescue her child. We take a quick trip to space where the Summers brothers say goodbye to their father, and Xavier says goodbye to Lilandra. It's date night for the X-Men, and Kitty, Peter, Kurt, and Amanda are out to see the ballet. An explosion and fire in a nearby building has Peter jump into action, but Blob is waiting for him inside. He's sent flying out the building, and a giant firebird controlled by Pyro grabs hold of him. He's superheated, and Avalanche then pilots trucks holding liquid nitrogen to converge on him. Kitty is in anguish to see Peter frozen in agony as a statue. Whether dead or alive, his fate is unknown.
I have to say, I was very confused until Arcade walked in the room, and it became clear that these were robots. And I was like, I went back and forth so many times, being like, "What is happening? Is this a dream?"
So the thing that really tipped me off was when she gets to Storm, and it's her old design. Because I was like, "Well, that's not how she looks now. She has a different costume and hair, and okay."
That's why I thought maybe
something
it
else
was
is going on here,
like an illusion or a dream or something, like,
yeah,
here she is kind of kicking everybody's butt, and that seems like something a villain would dream about, frankly. But
the first part of it feels very like this is something that we could expect, like her taking out Wolverine. Kitty finds the body, she tricks Kitty and stabs her. Colossus gets really mad. Like, it all feels very on brand and possible for a book to start that way. And then it gets a little bit crazier as it goes. Like when Scott shoots through Peter's chest.
Yeah. And uncharacteristically, too, of Scott. Like, he's not that type of person. to overreact. Like, he wouldn't be shooting to kill Mystique, right?
Well, so it says it's another stun beam, but it passes through a bunch of stuff and it makes the blast more powerful.
All right. Sure. Even the Wolverine's death would never happen. Like, he might.
I didn't think he was dead.
No. She says, and even your mutant healing factor won't prevent your bleeding to death.
Yeah, she doesn't know that, though.
Yeah. Also, where did Wolverine's body actually go?
She stashed it somewhere. It's probably in the ticket booth.
Can her mimicry here, like, does she doesn't, like, gain their powers. So, like, how was she able to, like, activate the claws?
I think she might be able to partially gain some physical powers, possibly similar to Morph in the TV series.
Okay, yeah.
I feel like this is more just them. It's either an example of they're not fully settled into like the restrictions or like bounds of Mystique's powers. Otherwise, it does also look like when she's transforming back to herself, it looks like she's pulling off a glove. So it may just be that she has like a weapon designed that looks like Wolverine's claw and glove situation.
Very good detective work. I do see that.
Thank you.
I appreciate as well, like Mystique recognizing after completing this, right? And having the conversation with Arcade about, hey, like your robots were great, but this isn't actually is what it would be in reality.
It was a series of 1v1s.
Right.
Like the X-Men work as a team.
This is a pairing I was not expecting, that Arcade could be tapped to provide a training simulation for the, Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which is...
I wrote that this is like a perfectly acceptable use of Arcade.
It's perfect, yeah.
He's found his niche finally.
Yeah, it was perfect. Hey, training supervillains, who would have known? And he's still a weirdo, which is great. I mean, like, they didn't abandon that.
All true. So I really liked the intro bit with Mystique. I thought that was cool, and it highlights how dangerous she is.
Yes.
Her point about like, the X-Men use teamwork. Very, very true. But it was fun to see her in action and to get like a glimpse into like how she plans and goes about certain things and has like the contingencies and, this is how she's going to take out Colossus. This is how she's going to take out Scott.
Yeah, it definitely gives her some cred.
She thinks a little bit more than some of the other villains that they encounter.
I think it's easy to kind of look at Mystique and say, oh, yeah, they use her for infiltration, and we've seen her kind of do that, right? Like the Pentagon situation that we've seen before. And here is Mystique showing that not only is she very capable at using her own powers, but she's very capable at being deadly and clever and using her brain to outsmart her opponents, even if she doesn't have the practical strength to necessarily go toe-to-toe. I mean, look at the Colossus situation here, for example of that.
You're talking about the where we end things?
No. I'm talking about like her being strategic with how she's tackling Colossus as a opponent in that one-on-one situation. But then that feeds into, of course, like where this issue ends, where, Colossus is just jobbing again. Or another wrestling term,
Peter.
Just
that Peter statue thing goes pretty hard though.
It looks great, but why are there? I was rereading that section before we hopped on because I was trying to figure out, because I must have just skimmed over it too quickly. Okay, so this,
like how I did with the Morlock part.
Yeah. So the explanation here is that Pyro superheats Peter, and then by quickly cooling him, you get this sort of encasing in stone situation that happens. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, but nobody in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants has ice powers. So how did they super cool him? And so I went back to look, and the answer is Avalanche somehow, maybe this is just where they chose to have this fight, but is essentially just moving tanker trucks that are filled with like liquid nitrogen, and that's, those explode and cause like the instant cooling and basically carbonate him, a la Han Solo. It was an expert play by the antagonists, unlike the octopus.
It's very satisfying to see the villains enact an evil and effective plan. I think it raises the stakes on, the Brotherhood is a real threat versus just being kind of like whatever.
100%. I think it like really changes the conversation around them, where they've just been kind of like, we've been defeated by the X-Men again. Darn. I'll get you next time.
Back to jail, I suppose.
Yeah, and I mean, even Blob makes that joke, right? Like, I give up.
What are you going to do? Send us to prison?
I'll be out of here by Monday. Oh, man, that image just goes so hard. You're right.
Peter!
Peter!
Next, hell hath no fury. That might be an oversell.
Yeah, seriously.
So I mentioned maybe I skimmed over it the same way that you skimmed over is that even in this issue or is that next issue? Oh man, I think that's next issue.
It's next.
I'll save it. I really don't have much more on this one.
No, let's keep the momentum flowing.
Keep it rolling.
Let's go.
Issue 178 begins with Kitty reaching out to Xavier for help. Meanwhile, Chuck is sitting by the fire, staring at a weird honeymoon photo of a naked Scott and Mady beneath the covers of a heart-shaped bed. Kitty's plea reaches him, and he sends the remaining X-Men, Wolverine and Storm, to come to her aid. Rogue is kept in the dark due to her past Brotherhood connections. Xavier then feels a jolt of pain as something smashes into his psionic defenses. Kitty is unsure what to do when she remembers that Reed Richards published an article in Scientific America about a device that thaws organic material without causing harm. She rushes to the Baxter building. Meanwhile, the Morlocks are romping around above ground. They find a young woman dead in an alley, and Mask begins reshaping her face, saying, "When I'm done, Pretty Kitty's own parents won't be able to tell him apart." Back at the Lincoln Center, Nightcrawler and Amanda begin fighting the Brotherhood, with Storm and Wolverine joining in soon after. It's a hard fight, but the X-Men start gaining ground after Storm calls the monsoon to make Pyro kinda useless. They then trick Avalanche into taking out the Blob. Meanwhile, Kitty has stormed the Baxter building and attempts to walk on air with her stolen device. The stress is too much, and she loses concentration, plummeting to the ground. The X-Men finally have the Brotherhood beaten, but they were just the diversion for the real prize. Back at the mansion, the professor realizes too late that it's the psychic jamming pattern Mystique used months ago in Washington. Disguised as Rogue, Mystique takes the shot. At the last second, Professor X is able to psychically nudge her aim to wound rather than kill. The real Rogue then walks in, and adopted daughter and mother hash some things out. She says that she had to leave because her power is out of control, and that Xavier is her last resort. She just wants to be normal, to have a chance. Mystique's projected form appears to the X-Men. She says to free the Brotherhood in exchange for Xavier's life. Before they leave, Destiny gives a cryptic warning to the X-Men regarding Kitty, the Baxter building, and timelines that intersect but do not proceed. Just then, they hear a call on the police radio about a young woman who jumped from the Baxter building on the ground with a presumed fatality. The issue ends with Kitty on the ground, in a pool of her blood, and beside the broken device.
Talking about red herrings. This is the mother of all red herrings.
To make clear what I was alluding to earlier, I had said something to the effect of hell of a cliffhanger, because the first time I read through this, I completely glossed over everything that the Morlocks were doing when it very, very clearly says, like, what is going on. And hey, that's not Kitty on the ground. It's a little less interesting now.
It cheapens the ending. And like we've seen this before.
It would have been
right?
cooler if they didn't spell it out as much.
Oh,
like if it
yes, just
let the reader kind of connect it and be like, oh, I'm smart. I connected the clues.
I think, for me, as I just said, I think it cheapens the ending. of this issue, right? And I always try and put my mind back into what readers would have been experiencing at the time of release. And I've mentioned this several times because I think it's important context, right? We're not reading this how this was released at the time. So, we can't, it's easy for us to look at the next issue when we finish this one and see, oh, look, there's Katie on the cover. But I think if they had either omitted the entire Morlock element here, right? Like from this story, and just kept it strictly to the Brotherhood, strictly to the fight, strictly to Kitty going into the Baxter building, trying to get this device that she, heard that Fantastic Four might have, and then ending, having seen the building, the security system, I think, is basically what attacks her. And then seeing the body of Kitty there on the ground, I think that really would have built the suspense of, oh my God, like what happened? Like, could this have actually been Kitty? And then, in the next issue, you could even open it, right? Like you open it this kind of the same way you did here, where you could have the Morlocks, planting the body and like picking her up and taking her down into the sewer. I still don't like it, right? Like we've seen this as a trope many, many times. We're trying to tease that one of the X-Men has died. Oh my God, here it is.
Definitely dead.
You're not going to want to miss the next issue, man. They're probably almost 100% dead.
It's real this time.
And then we're going to show you immediately that they weren't. Like there's just no buildup. Yeah, like we have Peter in this very perilous situation. So there is a bit of suspense in that regard. You probably could have just kept it at that, right? I did get a chuckle at the fact that the Fantastic Four just are seemingly never around.
They're very busy.
They are very busy people. Yeah, I think it just overall cheapened the ending to kind of spell it out in that way.
I would argue that opening up the next issue, like showing like, oh, like if they took the Morlocks completely out and then just open the next issue with like, oh, this is how they did it with the Morlocks, that would also feel cheap to me. I think that the middle ground of just like not explicitly narrating like, oh, Kitty's parents won't even be able to tell the difference between them, I think that would kind of, get us to that good solid place.
So I flipped through the first few pages of the next issue, which I won't get into, but
spoilers.
But they have a way of leading the X-Men to the conclusion that the body is not Kitty. Okay, so I agree
because Callisto wants to force a rematch.
I didn't get that deep, but.
I don't know. My last note is Callisto is fixing for an ass kicking.
Yeah, and hopefully it's from Caliban because he's clearly getting played here to sway his support to Callisto's side. But nonetheless,
she's just gotta poke the bear.
There could be a way of doing it where you lead with that. Again, I don't want to like say anything about it, but you could open up with them in the morgue looking at Kitty's body. And then, later on introduce the element of, what Callisto and Mask did in order to do this body swap.
This isn't Kitty. We found a crucifix around her neck. This makes no sense. Is it something like that? You don't have to say.
No, it's not that. It makes much more sense. And you're probably overthinking it. Just think of the members on the X-Men. And one of them is known for sniffing.
This doesn't smell like Kitty at all.
Sniffing these things out.
Yeah. This person died in an alley 2 days ago. I can smell it on her.
At first, when I saw the body, I was like, why is Ileana in this alley? That's not her. I wanted to just quickly mention, I love the visualization of Pyro's powers here. This like fire dragon kind of colliding with Kurt and his, oh my gosh, I'm not going to remember what her name is, but his girlfriend.
Amanda.
Oh, Amanda. Thank you. And cool to see her using magic too.
It is fun to see her in a more like offensive role versus it's just, it looks like she's like a member of the, Mystic Arts. She's doing battle. She's the real deal.
Yeah. she belongs. It makes, we previously have touched upon the weird family situation that exists between Kurt and Amanda, and how he was adopted into the family and now they're dating. And I like the story thread here, of Kurt is the one, not Rogue, that Mystique faltered on. And we see that kind of come back into play here, right? Where Amanda and Kurt are having a conversation about his birth parents. How...
Who could they be, though? She's blue like me. What could it mean?
I've never met another blue person before. This must be it.
It's the same blue.
But much to the foreshadowing that Mystique had anticipated with Arcade, once the X-Men were working together and not in a lopsided fight, they overcame the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, right?
Well, it does feel like Storm is a hard counter to Pyro.
And I appreciate that they painted the picture as being more than just it's raining, right? Like he's talking about how she's deliberately using thunder and lightning as like a mental distraction. Like he's having a hard time focusing and can't maintain the output of his fire manipulation, rather than, oh no, I'm just soggy now.
It feels bad for like Destiny in that fight. Like her job is to just be like, Kurt's teleporting behind you, but like she can't do that fast enough. She's also like barely pictured.
I mean, she's not really being used here, I think, in a combat capacity, because they even like complain that like, hey, why didn't you predict this? And she's just like, the future's always in motion. What do you want from me?
I think she does it. Does she save Nightcrawler? Yeah, I think she purposefully does not warn Blob about the other X-Men coming. But also Nightcrawler could just like probably teleport out of his grasp, so like whatever. But she thinks Nightcrawler is safe for the present. I do not think Mystique will fault me for that. After they are like, hey, why didn't you see this coming?
I think
she has to be sassy
more,
and be like,
adding more,
not all timelines are
right?
clear.
Like it's that extra little tease that, hey, reader, nudge, nudge. There's something more here between Nightcrawler and Mystique, and Destiny
also between Destiny and Mystique.
And Destiny seems less vindictive than Mystique, who's like hell-bent on trying to bring Rogue back into the family. And this preconceived notion that Mystique has that Rogue must be manipulating or be manipulated, or she wouldn't just walk away from me. I'm her mother. Like she would never do this. There has to be some sort of outside influence that's taking her, away from me as her mother. And, Charles Xavier is the obvious person to be responsible for this when, we have this confrontation that, just to double check for myself, seemingly ends with, Rogue basically explaining to her like, hey, this isn't about you. Like, this is about me. Like, I love you. I want to be with you, but I can't. Like, you cannot help me. This man can help me. The X-Men can help me. I need to control my powers. I want to feel normal. These are things that the Brotherhood cannot help me with. And then, my takeaway here is that Mystique hears this and walks away.
I like that. I like that she accepts the situation for what it is and is like, fine. She's not happy about it, but
I mean,
she has enough affection for Rogue that she lets it go.
Yeah, as any good parent should do, you're supporting your child.
I don't know that Mystique falls under the definition of good parent.
Wow. No. Oh my God. I just looked at the cover for the next issue. It's so awful.
It is pretty bad. We had already talked about this, but I didn't even register with me that that's Caliban in the photo. I was like, oh, it's a spooky skeleton. Cool.
Why is Kitty getting married to a corpse?
80s, man. Wild time. One thing I did like is that I felt like this issue highlighted Kitty's youth and not inexperience, but like less experience, and portrayed her in the way that she's portrayed. Peter's probably dead. She's in shock, grieving, unsure really what to do. The idea to steal the Fantastic Four device is a fun universal tie-in.
Yep.
Goes well with her character of being a big old science and tech nerd and reading about the device in a magazine. And then ultimately, even though we've seen her step up in grave situations in the past and kind of be the key element to the X-Men winning the day, we see her maturity and ability to concentrate kind of falter when put into this ultimate awful situation and, lose focus and take a wee tumble.
Yeah, it's, again, kind of is that character development that Kitty is more than just being the kid on the team, which I like. I think, I've had like real world conversations around this idea of being prepared, right? And it's difficult for people in situations that are high stress, they are shocking, you are stunned by a moment, right? And the example I'll give is like, a friend falls to the ground in a medical episode and you're standing there or, people are there and you don't know what to do because your brain is locked. And that can happen to anybody, like not just children. It happens to adults who are just, you're stunned and you can't process what's happening. But somebody who's prepared can kind of, in Kitty's case, she's able to snap out of that kind of shock and process the situation. Now, for like the average person in that situation, it could be just as simple as calling, for assistance. But in this case, obviously, she can't do that with Peter. Contacts Xavier and lets him know, like, hey, like we're being attacked. Peter's down, is really bad. Get us help, and then she jumps into action to try to like probably recognizes too. She can't take on the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So what does she do? She does the best things that she can do. She tries to go and find a solution to solve this problem. Just happens to know, hey, yeah, Reed Richards has just so happened to create a MacGuffin that can help Peter.
The perfect device for this situation. But I liked the failure aspect of it. Like I felt like it was, good to be like, this character does have less experience. And, this is an example of her maybe like ultimately failing when she loses like her concentration with her powers. But I felt like it's done in a way where we're not like cheapening all of her past wins.
And maybe there's an element here that we haven't yet considered, which is, what have the Morlocks done that could be influencing this?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, I haven't read the next issue's few first pages, so I couldn't say.
Well, I can tell you it's not addressed. It's not addressed there, but we don't know exactly when this swap takes place. Is it, does Kitty actually fall out of the building and just survives that fall? And
she might catch herself and then she's taken. It's hard to say.
Yeah. Right. So I think there's like an element that we're not quite clear about. But to your point, I agree. It doesn't cheapen her to be caught off guard in a high pressure situation because we literally saw the same thing happen to Jobber Peter.
Poor Peter.
Classic Peter. Always the jobber. Because Wolverine can't be. So he's the next best thing. He could take a beating.
That's his job.
Always on the edge of death, Peter is.
No one else could be superheated and then super cooled. Like, that kills everyone else. So it's gotta be Peter.
Probably. Probably. All right, you want to do overall thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. Elements of each book had, like, some good things in there. I think the first one was kind of like the slowest or maybe least interesting. The second one, I enjoyed some of that Mystique stuff we got, some of the Brotherhood of Mystique stuff, and this last issue is good. I do like the Peter being frozen in carbonite situation. It ultimately, it's kind of a mishmash. Feels like this is sort of the issues that they're maybe getting in before they decide on like their next big stretch of where are we going. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a lot of setup for whatever next issue's Morlock thing is going to be. Is it like a 5 or a 6?
Oh, damn. All right.
Like, it's just fine. Well, I don't think of 5 as being like bad. Like it's not a 50% on a test. It's more kind of like very middling.
Okay, yeah. All right. That's good. I think that's important context to provide.
Someday we'll publish a rubric for like what do these numbers mean? 8 always means great in my head because they rhyme.
8 is great. Like Tony the Tiger would say. Not a sponsor.
Does he though?
I don't know.
Tony, reach out to us. We'd love to work with you. I've been a fan for years. You're a childhood hero. I had a Frosted Flakes cool Hot Wheels semi truck thing that I think I got from sending in some cereal box tops or something like that. So
oh damn,
hit me up. Maybe my parents still have it.
It could be featured in our very visual storytelling series that we have. For me, I'm going to be a little bit more generous than you because I think 5 for me is like a 50%.
Well, I said 5 or 6.
Yeah, I think the first issue is definitely the slowest and is just some.
Hell yeah, beat that octopus's ass, Scott. Get him.
Yeah, that octopus was a real antagonist that we'll all remember, the nameless octopus. So that aside, like I really enjoyed the revisiting of the anti-mutant sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really liked seeing a competent version of Mystique and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And like even in this situation with how it ended, yeah, they were ultimately unsuccessful in their fight, but that was not their main objective. Their main objective was getting to Rogue. So like for all those reasons, like I would probably give this like a 7.
I think you're talking me into a 6.
The things that I don't like, I'm going to use negative spaces as my analogy here. I don't care about the Morlocks stuff. Like, I hope after we get past this weird Kitty Pryde story that we can just leave them behind and never go back. Like, I'm fine with the existence.
I got some bad news for you.
I'm fine with the existence of like other mutants existing and that they're not all on par with the X-Men and there is like a disparity that exists. That's fine. I just like, it's just the way they're being used right now is just weird and I don't like it. It's just
it's Phantom of the Opera-y. It will be nice to see Callisto go from like her current dickish self to being like a close ally to Storm.
Sure. If there is a path here that leads us to that, I am all for it. Currently, I don't know what that would be beyond Callisto just getting her ass kicked again by Storm. And
I feel like it's got to happen again, right?
Well,
like she's just going to beat on her a little bit.
And the Storm that exists now is
hardcore,
way more hardcore. Right? Like
she's going to show up with her own knife to the knife fight.
Well, and I think she would be more willing to just unleash her powers now compared to in their first battle, where the hesitation that Storm was using was like she was more conflicted then in who she was, right? And now she's
her powers were on the fritz.
Yeah, and now we have a more confident, fierce, determined Storm.
That does it for this episode of Uncanny Book Club. Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you next episode where we'll discuss issues 179 to 181.
Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Uncanny Book Club. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share with a friend.